Alex had always believed that the world around him was predictable. He worked a regular 9-to-5 job, lived in a modest apartment, and spent most evenings watching movies or playing video games. His life was simple, and he liked it that way. Nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. But tonight, as he walked down a dark alley on his way home from work, he had no idea that everything was about to change. It was a quiet evening, and the only sounds were the soft hum of traffic in the distance and the faint rustling of leaves in the trees. Alex was halfway through the alley when he heard something, a soft cry, almost like a whimper. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal or a homeless person in need of help, but as he moved closer, he froze. There, sitting on the cold, wet pavement, was a girl. But she wasn't like any girl Alex had ever seen. She had bright green skin, her large eyes glowed a soft blue, and her hair shimmered like starlight. She looked young, maybe 10 or 12 years old, but there was something haunting about her. Her clothes were tattered and torn, and she appeared to be trembling with fear. Alex stopped in his tracks. He wasn't sure what to do. Should he run? Should he call for help? But there was something about her, something that pulled at his heart. She looked lost, desperate. He took a cautious step toward her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly, hoping she could understand him. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. She didn't speak, but Alex could see the tears streaming down her face. She didn't look dangerous, but she definitely looked scared. "Hey, it's okay," Alex said gently, trying to comfort her. He crouched down to her level, making himself less intimidating. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl still didn't say anything, but she seemed to trust him. Slowly, she reached out her hand. It trembled, but it wasn't in fear anymore. It was as if she was reaching for something. Or someone. Alex extended his hand to hers, and when their fingers touched, a strange feeling washed over him. For a brief moment, it felt as though time had stopped. A flash of images rushed through his mind. Alien landscapes, strange ships, and a voice calling out to the girl. Alex pulled back, confused. What was that? It was like a memory that wasn't his. The girl, however, didn't seem to notice his discomfort. She was still looking at him, her eyes filled with silent desperation. He didn't know why, but something deep inside him told him he couldn't just walk away. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she slowly stood up, her body swaying as if she could barely hold herself up. She was weak physically and emotionally. Alex's heart went out to her, and without thinking, he reached out to steady her. "Where's your family? Where are you from?" Alex asked, looking around the alley. He half expected someone to jump out of the shadows, but the alley remained eerily quiet. The girl glanced around, then at Alex, as if she was unsure of how to respond. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, Alex felt like she was trying to tell him something important, something that words couldn't explain. Then, as quickly as the moment passed, she turned and began to walk slowly toward the end of the alley. Alex didn't know what to do. Should he follow her? He hesitated for a second, but then his feet moved on their own. The pull to help her was too strong. He hurried after her, trying to keep up as she moved with surprising speed for such a small, fragile-looking girl. He caught up to her just as she reached the street. "Wait!" Alex called, his voice anxious. "Where are you going?" She didn't stop. Instead, she looked back at him, her blue eyes wide with something between hope and fear. Then, without another word, she darted into the street. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The street was busy, cars honking as they zoomed past. He rushed to her, his hand reaching out to stop her from running into traffic. But just as he was about to grab her, something strange happened. A large shadow appeared overhead. It wasn't a cloud, no, this was something much larger. Alex looked up, his breath caught in his throat. A massive dark ship hovered above them, its silhouette blocking out the stars. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. The ship was sleek, metallic, and unmistakably alien. The girl froze, her eyes locking on the ship. There was no fear on her face, only a strange sense of recognition. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out as though she knew exactly what to do next. Alex stood there, his mouth open in shock. His heart raced as the ship hovered just above them, its massive form casting a shadow over the street. What was going on? Who were these people? And why was this girl so connected to them? Before Alex could ask another question, a voice echoed in his mind. A voice that wasn't his own, but one that seemed to be speaking directly to him. Do not let them take her, the voice warned. Alex's knees felt weak. He looked at the girl who was now staring up at the ship with an expression that was almost peaceful. He didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. His life was about to change forever. And it all started with this strange, lost alien girl. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something much bigger than he could understand. The alien ship had disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, vanishing into the night sky without a trace. He stood frozen, his mind racing. What had just happened? And why was this strange girl, this alien, connected to it? He turned his attention back to the girl who was now standing in front of him, looking up at him with wide, unblinking eyes. She still hadn't spoken, but there was something in her gaze that made him feel like she was trying to communicate with him without words. He couldn't explain it, but there was a connection between them. A bond that had formed the moment they touched. "Hey," Alex said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, but it was clear she was still frightened. Alex could see the fear in her eyes, but there was also something else. A quiet sadness, as though she had experienced things far beyond her years. Alex had no idea what she had gone through, but he knew he had to help her. The girl stepped back, glancing nervously at the street. Her eyes darted to the alley where she had been sitting earlier. It was as if she was trying to decide whether to run or stay. Alex felt a pang of worry. She didn't know where to go, and neither did he. He didn't have a plan, but one thing was certain. He couldn't just leave her alone in the streets. "Let's go somewhere safe," Alex said, standing up. "I know a place. It's not much, but it's better than being out here." The girl didn't hesitate. She followed him without a word, her feet moving quickly but carefully as if she was still unsure of what was happening. They walked in silence, the city streets bustling around them, but for some reason, it felt like they were in their own little world. Alex couldn't explain it, but being around her felt natural. He didn't feel afraid. In fact, he felt more at ease than he had in years. When they arrived at his apartment building, Alex led the girl upstairs. He had no idea how to explain this situation to anyone, but for now it didn't matter. What mattered was getting her out of danger. He opened the door to his apartment and gestured for her to come inside. The apartment was modest, nothing fancy. It had simple furniture, a small kitchen, and a couch that Alex had picked up at a second-hand store. Nothing special, but it was home. "Make yourself comfortable," Alex said, trying to sound reassuring. He wasn't sure if she understood him, but he thought it was worth a try. The girl hesitated for a moment before slowly walking into the living room. She seemed to be taking everything in, her eyes scanning the room as though it were something entirely foreign. But then she stopped and turned to Alex, her expression serious. "Are you human?" she asked in a soft, almost hesitant voice. Alex blinked in surprise. Her voice was different, softer, like a melody, but there was no mistaking it. She had spoken. Yeah," Alex replied, still a bit stunned. "I'm human." "You're not?" The girl shook her head slowly as if the answer was obvious. She opened her mouth to say something else, but no words came out. Instead, her eyes flickered with something, an emotion Alex couldn't quite place. "Do you know where you're from?" Alex asked, his voice gentle. "Do you know how you got here?" The girl hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window as if looking for something or someone. She then shook her head again. "Lost," she whispered. Alex could feel the weight of her words. Lost. It was the only word she had spoken, but it held so much meaning. She was lost, and Alex knew it, but why? And how could he help her find her way back? He sat down on the couch, his mind racing. He needed answers, but there was no way to get them. Not yet, at least. The alien ship, the strange connection between them, and now this girl who had somehow found him. It was all too much to process. The silence between them stretched on, and Alex realized something. There was something strange happening with him. It wasn't just the events of the night or the fear of the unknown. It was a feeling that seemed to intensify every time he looked at her. It was like his mind and heart were somehow linked to hers. Suddenly, his vision blurred, and he felt a sharp pang in his chest, like a deep pull to something far away. He blinked rapidly, trying to shake the feeling off, but it wouldn't go away. He saw flashes of an unfamiliar landscape, vast alien cities, glowing lights, strange beings, and a voice calling out, speaking in a language he couldn't understand. It was as if the memories weren't his own, but somehow they felt real. They felt like they belonged to someone else. To the girl, "Are you okay?" the girl asked softly, her eyes full of concern. She was looking directly at him, as if she could sense his discomfort. Alex didn't know how to answer. How could he explain what was happening inside him? He wasn't sure what these strange flashes were, but they had to be connected to her. There was no other explanation. I think I'm seeing your memories, Alex said, his voice low. But I don't understand why. The girl's eyes widened, and for the first time she spoke with urgency. It's the bond. You're not just helping me. You're part of it. Alex stared at her, his mind struggling to make sense of her words. Part of it? What did she mean by that? Before he could ask any more questions, a loud sound interrupted their conversation. It was a low hum followed by a heavy thud. The sound was coming from the street below. Something or someone was approaching. The girl's eyes went wide with fear. She grabbed Alex's arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so small. They're coming, she whispered urgently. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The feeling of being watched, of being hunted, was creeping back again. Whoever had been looking for her was getting closer, and this time Alex wasn't sure if he could protect her. The noise outside the apartment grew louder. At first it was just a faint hum, like an engine idling in the distance, but it quickly grew in intensity, until the entire building seemed to vibrate. Alex glanced at the girl, whose wide eyes were locked on the window, her body tense. She was more alert than he'd ever seen her. There was no mistaking it now. Something was coming for them. Who is it? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure if she understood, but he needed answers. She hadn't spoken much, and he still didn't know her name, where she came from or why she had appeared in the alley. But now the fear in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. Without answering, the girl grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his skin. She pulled him toward the door, her urgency making him move faster than he had planned. Alex didn't question it. He was starting to learn that when she acted this way, there was no time to waste. Wait, he started to protest, but before he could finish, she had already opened the door and was stepping into the hall. The building was eerily quiet, like a ghost town. No one else was awake, and the air felt thick with tension. Alex's mind raced. He didn't know who or what was coming for them, but he knew it wasn't something he could handle alone. The girl's fear was contagious, spreading through him like wildfire. They moved down the narrow hallway, their footsteps muffled by the worn carpet. Alex kept looking over his shoulder, his heart pounding in his chest. Every shadow seemed to shift, every creak in the building sounded like a warning. The sense of danger was overwhelming. The girl led him toward the back stairs, her eyes scanning the darkness with precision. She knew where she was going. This wasn't just random panic. She had a purpose. Alex didn't know how, but somehow she seemed to have everything planned. She had to. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, the hum outside grew louder, vibrating the walls. Alex turned to look at the street through a small crack in the window at the back of the building. His eyes widened as he saw what he had feared. Hovering above the city was a massive alien ship. Its sleek black surface shimmered under the dim streetlights. The ship was huge, easily the size of a small building. It was almost silent except for the low hum that filled the air, sending chills down Alex's spine. He swallowed hard. So it's them. The girl was already moving again, tugging at his arm. We need to go, she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with urgency. Alex didn't need to be told twice. They exited the building, and the cold night air hit them like a shock to the system. Alex's breath came in shallow gasps as he tried to process everything. The ship, the girl. His life had been turned upside down in just a matter of hours. He had no plan, no idea what to do next, but all he could do was follow her. They ran through the streets, the city now feeling more like a maze than a familiar place. Alex's thoughts were a jumbled mess. How had the girl known to run? Why hadn't he seen the ship sooner? And why was he now involved in something so alien to his world? Why are they after you? Alex asked between heavy breaths, trying to keep up with her fast pace. The girl didn't answer right away. She glanced over her shoulder nervously, her eyes flicking to the sky. As they turned a corner, she finally spoke. My mother, she said simply. They want her. They need her. Alex was confused. Your mother? What does she have to do with all this? The girl stopped for a moment, her small form trembling. I can't explain, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But they can't have her. They'll destroy everything. They'll destroy Earth. Her words struck him like a slap. Destroy Earth? The weight of her statement hung heavily in the air. Alex stopped, his mind reeling. Was she serious? How could an alien ship, a small girl, and her mother have the power to destroy the Earth? It didn't make sense. Before he could ask another question, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep, rumbling noise shook the street, and Alex heard the unmistakable sound of engines revving up. They were coming closer. The girl grabbed his arm once again, pulling him down a narrow alley. "We need to hide, now." Alex followed her instinctively, his heart racing in his chest. The alley was dark, almost pitch black, with only a faint glimmer of light from the street lamps. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to keep his breathing steady. The girl stood close to him, her body tense, her eyes darting around. Then Alex heard it, a soft, mechanical whirring sound. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but it was unmistakable. Something was coming, something small and fast, moving along the alley. Alex turned his head slightly, straining to hear. In the distance, two alien figures appeared, their glowing eyes scanning the street. They were tall, humanoid, but with sharp angular features and metallic skin. Their movements were smooth, robotic. They were looking for something or someone. And from the way they moved, Alex knew they were dangerous. The girl froze beside him, her breathing shallow, her body rigid with fear. She looked up at Alex, her eyes wide with desperation. "They'll find us if we don't leave." Alex swallowed hard. Leave? How were they supposed to escape these monsters? He had no weapon, no plan, and no idea where they could go. But the girl was already moving, pulling him further into the shadows. Alex had no choice but to follow. As they turned a corner, the sounds of the alien soldiers faded away, but the fear in his chest only grew. He didn't know where this road was leading or if they could make it out alive. What Alex did know, however, was that there was no turning back now. He was in this with her for better or worse, and whatever was coming for them, he had to be ready to face it. The night seemed to stretch endlessly as Alex and the girl ran through the unfamiliar city streets, both of them desperate to escape the looming threat that was following them. Their breath came in ragged gasps as they moved swiftly through alleys and narrow passageways, hoping to shake off the alien pursuers who had been trailing them for what felt like hours. As they turned yet another corner, Alex stumbled to a halt. The girl, whose name he still didn't know, didn't even break stride. She had an innate sense of direction, moving with a confidence that seemed to come from somewhere beyond this world. She didn't seem scared, no, she was focused, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Alex, on the other hand, felt a growing sense of unease, his mind spinning with questions. "What now?" Alex asked, panting. He could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him. His mind was racing, the alien ship, the strange flashes of memory, and now the girl who somehow felt like more than just a frightened child. He didn't know where to go from here, but one thing was clear. He couldn't keep running forever. Without looking back, the girl held up her hand, signaling for him to follow her. Alex hesitated for a moment before doing so. She led him toward an industrial part of the city, where the buildings grew taller, their steel skeletons rising up against the dark sky like silent sentinels. It was quiet here, too quiet. The hum of the city had died down, and the only sound now was their hurried footsteps echoing off the concrete. They came to a large, rusted door, tucked away between two old warehouses. The girl turned to Alex and for the first time spoke more than a few words. "Inside. We can rest here," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Alex stared at her for a moment, unsure of what to expect, but then the door creaked open with a low groan. The girl stepped inside and Alex followed, unsure of whether it was a trap or the first real refuge they had found. The room they entered was dark and musty, filled with the smell of old machinery and forgotten things. The walls were lined with shelves full of discarded parts, and the faint glow of a few flickering lights cast eerie shadows across the room. It felt like an abandoned warehouse, but there was something strangely comforting about it. The girl didn't waste any time. She immediately went to a corner of the room and knelt down beside a large rusted crate. She pulled at it with surprising strength, and Alex watched, bewildered, as she opened it with ease. Inside there was an old weathered map, alien in design but still legible. "What is that?" Alex asked, his voice low. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she spread the map out on the floor between them. It was dotted with strange symbols, markings that Alex couldn't understand. But one thing was clear, this map didn't show any ordinary place. It was a map of the city, but with locations marked in ways that made no sense to him. "It's the way home," she said quietly. "This is how we get there. Home?" Alex repeated, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Where is home for you?" The girl didn't answer. She simply pointed to one of the locations on the map. It was marked by a large symbol that looked like a star, and it was situated on the outskirts of the city, beyond the familiar streets and into uncharted territory. Alex stared at the map for a long moment. The girl was calm now, focused, but the weight of her silence was unsettling. He had so many questions, but it seemed that she wasn't ready or willing to answer them. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" Alex asked, his frustration seeping through. "Why not tell me what's going on? Why are they after you? And why—" The girl raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Not yet," she said simply. "We need to move quickly." Alex was taken aback. Her response was so matter-of-fact, as though everything had already been decided. But as much as he wanted to know more, he knew that pushing her wouldn't help. He nodded, swallowing his impatience. The girl glanced at the map again, then stood up and grabbed a small device from the crate, something Alex hadn't noticed before. It was round, metallic, and strange-looking. She pressed a button on it, and the device emitted a soft glow, illuminating the room in a pale light. "What's that?" Alex asked, more out of curiosity than anything else. "It's a tracker," she explained, her voice distant, "to make sure they don't find us." Alex blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "They're still looking for us?" She didn't respond directly. Instead, she tucked the device into her pocket and began rolling up the map. "We leave now. Before they track us again." Alex didn't ask any more questions. He could see the determination in her eyes, the way her posture had shifted from one of fear to one of focus. Whatever was going on, this girl knew how to survive in a world that seemed like it didn't belong to her. Without another word, they exited the warehouse through a hidden back door, and Alex felt a sudden rush of cold air as they stepped into the streets again. The city felt different now, darker, more menacing. The alien ship was still somewhere above, lurking like a predator waiting for its prey. They moved quickly, avoiding the main roads and sticking to alleyways and hidden paths. Alex could hear the distant sound of engines, like the low hum of something massive, but he dared not look back. He knew that they couldn't afford to waste any time. Every step they took felt like it was leading them deeper into the unknown. Alex didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew that whatever it was, it would change everything. The girl had mentioned a way home, her home, but what did that even mean? Where was home for someone like her? They walked for hours, never speaking, each lost in their own thoughts. The night stretched on, and as dawn finally began to break, Alex realized that they had reached the edge of the city. The familiar sights of urban life had disappeared, replaced by an open stretch of land that seemed to go on forever. "Here," the girl said, finally breaking the silence. "This is where we begin." Alex glanced around, confused. He could see nothing but desolate fields and the distant glow of the city. The land ahead was wild, untamed, like nothing he had ever seen before. His pulse quickened. Whatever was waiting for them here, it was going to be a whole new world, and Alex had no idea what kind of future he was about to walk into. The sun had barely risen when they reached the edge of the city. The towering skyline that had once felt so familiar now seemed distant and irrelevant, fading into the horizon as Alex and the girl stepped onto the open, desolate land. It was as if they had crossed into another world entirely. The ground was rough beneath their feet, a mix of hard dirt and wild grasses that seemed to stretch for miles. There were no roads, no signs of human life, just an endless stretch of open space. Alex had never felt more out of place. Everything he had known, the city, the routine, the quiet evenings on his couch, seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, standing beside the girl, he couldn't help but feel small and insignificant in the face of the vastness of this alien landscape. The girl, whose name Alex still didn't know, moved with purpose, as though this was where she was meant to be. She didn't look back at him, didn't hesitate or falter. It was as though she had walked this path before, as though this desolate world was her home, not the strange city they had just left behind. They moved in silence for what felt like hours, walking through an unending expanse of wilderness. The air was different here, drier, colder, and it had a faint, unfamiliar scent. Alex couldn't place it, but it made him feel like he was on the edge of something that wasn't meant for humans. There were no animals, no birds, just the whisper of wind through the tall grasses and the soft crunch of their footsteps on the ground. As they walked, Alex couldn't help but ask the question that had been nagging at him since the moment they'd left the safety of the city. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. His words felt small against the vastness of the land. "What is this place?" The girl didn't answer at first. She just kept walking, her eyes focused ahead. For a moment, Alex thought she hadn't heard him, but then she spoke. "It's the place where my mother is," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "And where they cannot find us." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Her mother? He'd heard the girl mention her before, but he hadn't known just how important she was. He had assumed she was just a part of the girl's past, a distant memory. But now it was clear, her mother was the reason they were running. She was the reason the alien forces were after them. But what does she have to do with all this? Alex pressed. "Why are they after you both? And why didn't you tell me sooner? Why bring me into this?" The girl paused, but only for a moment. She turned to look at him, her blue eyes reflecting something. Regret, maybe, or sorrow. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "My mother is more than just a person. She is a key, one of the last of her kind." Alex frowned, trying to make sense of her words. "A key to what?" The girl didn't answer right away. Instead, she pointed to the horizon where the land seemed to rise up in the distance, forming jagged peaks like mountains. There, in the shadow of the mountains, was something strange, a massive, shimmering structure like a giant fortress made of light and metal. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The sight of it made his stomach tighten with both awe and fear. It looked like a place out of a science fiction movie, but this was real. "That is where we are going," the girl said, her voice steady now. "It's where my mother is, where the answers are." Alex looked at the structure, his heart racing. That's not a normal building, is it? It's like nothing I've ever seen before." "It's not from your world," she replied, her voice growing more distant. "My mother built it. She built it to hide from them, to keep us safe." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. He didn't fully understand what the girl meant, but the way she spoke made it clear that whatever was happening, whatever had happened to her, was far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. And now he was caught in the middle of it. The ground beneath them began to rise as they walked closer to the distant structure. The air grew colder, sharper, and Alex could feel the weight of something ancient pressing down on him. It wasn't just the physical distance that was growing between him and the city. It was as if they were leaving behind the world he knew, stepping into something much older, much stranger. As they neared the base of the structure, the girl suddenly stopped. Alex followed suit, his heart pounding. The structure in front of them was even more magnificent up close. The surface was smooth and metallic, glowing with an otherworldly light that seemed to pulse in time with Alex's heartbeat. It was as though the entire thing was alive, breathing with energy. "This is it," the girl said. "My mother is inside." Alex stared at her, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment. They had reached the place that could hold the answers, the place where the girl's mother was hiding, and the place where the aliens would no doubt be coming for them. He didn't know what to expect, didn't know what kind of danger they were walking into, but one thing was certain. This was no longer just about helping a lost girl. It was about something much larger, something that could change the fate of both their worlds. The girl turned to Alex then, her expression intense. "When we go inside, you have to promise me something," she said. "No matter what you see, no matter what happens, you have to trust me. Do you understand?" Alex nodded slowly, though he wasn't sure if he understood anything at all. He'd been thrown into this strange new world, with its alien ships, its hidden forces, and a girl who seemed to carry the weight of an entire universe on her small shoulders. But now, as they stood before the glowing structure, he realized that there was no turning back. Whatever this place was, whatever answers it held, it was the only way forward. And Alex was about to find out what lay beyond the door to the unknown. The entrance to the massive structure loomed before them, an imposing doorway that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, as if it were made from a substance that didn't belong in this world. Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with dread. He had no idea what awaited them inside, but every instinct in his body screamed that things were about to escalate beyond anything he could imagine. The girl, her small hand still clutching his arm, tugged him forward with surprising strength. She was no longer the fragile, lost child he had first encountered. There was a fierce determination in her eyes, a sense of purpose that Alex couldn't ignore. This was her world now, and he was just a player in her story. As they stepped inside, Alex's senses were overwhelmed. The air inside was thick with energy, the walls alive with an electric hum that seemed to vibrate through his entire body. The room stretched out before them, filled with vast metallic pillars glowing with a soft blue light. It felt like a living thing, a place of power and secrets. The floor was smooth and seamless, leading them deeper into the heart of the structure. "This is where it begins," the girl said quietly, her voice almost drowned out by the hum of the space around them. Alex looked around, still trying to process the surreal environment. "Where does it end?" he asked, his voice thick with uncertainty. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led him down a narrow corridor that curved around several corners, each one revealing more of the glowing alien architecture. It was as if they were walking through the bones of a living creature, a structure not designed by hands, but by something far older and more intelligent. After what felt like an eternity of walking, they finally came to a large chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols and intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with light. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on that pedestal stood a single object, a small glowing orb that emitted an ethereal light. It looked like a star suspended in midair, its glow so intense that Alex had to squint. "This is it," the girl whispered, stepping forward. "This is the key. The last piece." Alex took a step back, instinctively feeling that something was wrong. He didn't know what this key was, but he had a bad feeling about it. The girl's mother, the mysterious alien race, the ship chasing them. It was all starting to feel like a dangerous puzzle, and Alex was the piece that didn't quite fit. Before he could voice his concerns, the entire room trembled. The hum that had been resonating from the walls intensified, and the lights around them flickered. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, mechanical, and relentless. "They're here," the girl said, her voice filled with both fear and resolve. She turned to face Alex. "We need to protect the orb. They'll try to take it." Alex felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. "Who's coming? Who are they?" The girl didn't respond. Instead, she stepped forward, reaching out for the orb. As her fingers brushed against its surface, a blinding flash of light filled the room, and Alex had to shield his eyes. When the light subsided, he looked up to find the girl standing in front of the pedestal, her body surrounded by a soft, glowing aura. "I'm ready," she said softly, almost to herself. The ground beneath them rumbled again, but this time it was followed by the sound of screeching metal. The entrance to the chamber exploded inward, sending shards of metal flying across the room. Alex barely had time to react before a group of armored alien soldiers stormed in, their glowing eyes fixed on the girl. "Give us the key," one of them shouted, its voice robotic and cold. The girl didn't move, her stance firm as she held her ground. "You'll never take it," she said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet fury. The soldiers advanced, but before they could make it any closer, a wave of energy erupted from the orb, blasting them backward. Alex barely had time to duck as the energy surged through the room, sending the soldiers flying across the chamber. He watched in stunned silence as the girl stood, her eyes closed, her hands outstretched toward the orb. It was like she was channeling the power of the artifact itself, commanding it to protect them. But the aliens weren't done. As the last soldier recovered and began to rise, another figure entered the room, tall, imposing, and unmistakably different from the others. This one was not clad in armor. Instead, it wore a long cloak, its face obscured by a dark helmet. The figure stood silently for a moment, observing the scene with cold, calculating eyes. "You cannot win," the figure spoke, its voice deep and filled with authority. "The orb belongs to us. You are no longer safe." The girl's eyes snapped open, locking onto the figure with a fierce intensity. "You'll never have it. This world, my world, is no longer yours to control." A low growl escaped the figure's throat. "Foolish girl. You are the last of your kind. There is nothing left for you here." In an instant, the figure raised its hand and a dark energy shot out from its palm, striking the girl with a force so strong that Alex felt the air around him crackle. The girl screamed, her body writhing in pain as the dark energy enveloped her. "No!" Alex shouted, rushing toward her. Without thinking, Alex reached out for the nearest weapon he could find, a large metal rod that had fallen to the ground during the earlier chaos. He swung it at the figure, his arms fueled by panic and anger. The rod made contact with the figure's arm, but it had no effect. The figure turned toward him, its eyes burning with cold fury. "You should not have intervened," the figure hissed, its voice like ice. "Now you will die as well." Alex braced himself for the worst. But just as the figure raised its hand to strike, the girl, still glowing with energy, released a shockwave that sent the figure stumbling backward. The energy from the orb surged through her body, and she cried out, "This ends now!" With a final desperate push, the girl channeled all of her strength into the orb. A massive explosion of light filled the room, sending shockwaves across the structure. The alien soldiers collapsed, and the figure was thrown backward, its dark energy dissipating in the blast. For a moment, everything was silent. The room was filled with a heavy, oppressive stillness. Then slowly, Alex looked up to find the girl standing, her body trembling but unbroken. The orb was still glowing, though its light was fading. She turned to Alex, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and relief. "It's over," she whispered. But Alex knew that this battle was only the beginning. The alien forces would regroup, and the war for control of the orb, and for the future of both their worlds, was far from finished. The aftermath of the battle left the room in a haze of smoke and dust, the air thick with the scent of burnt metal and energy. The chamber, once so grand and full of light, now stood in eerie silence, save for the faint hum of the orb, which was still glowing weakly in the center of the room. Alex couldn't quite grasp what had just happened. The girl, the one who had seemed so fragile when he first met her, had unleashed powers beyond anything he could have imagined. She had taken down the alien forces with nothing but her will and the energy from the orb, leaving the imposing figure of the enemy leader lying motionless in the far corner of the room. Despite the victory, Alex could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The girl, still standing, was panting with exhaustion. Her eyes were half closed, her body trembling from the effort she had expended. She looked as if she might collapse at any moment, and yet she stood tall, her gaze fixed on the now silent orb. Alex approached her cautiously, his own heart still racing from the intensity of the battle. You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You really did it." The girl's lips curled into a tired smile, though there was no joy in it. "It's not over yet," she said softly. "This was just the beginning." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" "They're gone. We won." She shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with a sorrowful wisdom. "The war isn't just about us anymore. The orb, the power it holds, it's too important. If it falls into the wrong hands, everything will be destroyed. Not just our worlds, but everything." Alex was silent for a long moment, trying to wrap his mind around what she was saying. It was impossible to fully comprehend, but one thing was clear. This girl, this alien being, had a greater purpose than he had ever imagined. And somehow, against all odds, he had become part of it. "Why did you bring me into this?" Alex asked, his voice quiet, full of uncertainty. "I'm just a guy. I don't belong here." The girl turned to him, her gaze softening for a moment. "You are more than just a guy. You're a key, Alex. The connection we share, it's not by accident. You were meant to be here with me. You've always been part of this, even before you knew it." Alex shook his head, feeling more lost than ever. He didn't understand how he could be connected to any of this. But there was something undeniable between them, something that went beyond words or logic. It was as if their fates were intertwined, and somehow he was part of the girl's story. Before he could ask another question, the girl turned her gaze back to the orb, her expression turning serious again. "The enemies will be back. They'll never stop searching for the orb, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. We can't stay here." Alex nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of their situation. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting something far greater than either of them. The girl had mentioned a war, a battle between alien forces that threatened everything. But why him? Why had he been dragged into this cosmic struggle? He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when the stakes were this high. "Where do we go?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. The girl paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the room, then turned back to him. "I need to take the orb to the place where it can be hidden. It's the only way to keep it safe. If we don't, the enemy will find it again. And when they do, they will destroy everything." Alex didn't hesitate. "Then let's go. We'll do it together." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read his intentions. After a long moment, she nodded. "We're in this together," she said softly. "But you need to understand, this is just the beginning. We'll face many more battles, and this time you'll be fighting alongside me." The girl stepped forward, taking the orb in her hands once more. The light from the orb flickered, but it still pulsed with power. Alex felt its energy reverberate through him, a reminder that this was no longer just about running from danger. It was about protecting the balance of everything. They walked together through the glowing corridors of the structure, their steps steady despite the uncertainty ahead. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a storm, an unstoppable force that would test everything they had. But in that moment, with the girl by his side, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Outside, the world was still dark, the city miles away. The alien forces might have been defeated for now, but the war was far from over. Alex had been thrown into something beyond his comprehension, but now he understood his place in it. It wasn't about who he was. It was about what he could become. They stepped outside into the alien landscape, the horizon stretching out before them like an endless journey. Alex knew that the challenges ahead would be far more dangerous than anything they had faced so far. But he also knew that he wasn't alone anymore. The girl, his unlikely companion, had made him part of something greater than himself. Together, they would protect the orb, and together, they would fight the forces that sought to destroy everything. As they walked into the unknown, Alex couldn't help but wonder if this was the start of something new, something that would change the fate of both their worlds. But no matter what came next, one thing was certain: he would stand by her side, and for the first time, Alex didn't feel like just a guy lost in a strange situation. He felt like a hero, fighting for something bigger than himself.